Hello and welcome to the webinar. My name is Jim Torrens of the National Network of Sector Partners, or NNSP. Some years ago, I oversaw a program that prepared people making the transition from welfare to work for jobs in law firms in San Francisco. And in every training cycle, there was a moment when all of us involved realized that the participants had somehow been transformed from the sometimes reluctant, sometimes combative, sometimes tardy or unreliable people who had first signed up for the course into convincing professionals. And as they went off to interviews in their interview attire to secure internships that would in most cases lead to full-time jobs and really transform their lives, I could see, we all could see that they recognized that change too, and of course we're pleased with that. And I think we all wondered or marveled every time, although this happened every cycle, just how did this come about? And ultimately, how were we successful at persuading top-flight San Francisco law firms, which are some of the most rigorous and maybe challenging workplaces around, to take a chance on people with limited work histories and no prior work experience? Well, in a sense, these are the same questions behind today's webinar, in which our panelists are going to talk about an innovative program in Memphis that is helping manufacturers meet their pressing demand for qualified employees while creating opportunities for entry-level job seekers. The Industrial Readiness Training of Southwest Tennessee Community College is a program that I've been excited about ever since I heard about it at our conference on sector initiatives last fall. And I've seen also the potential for its broad application or for lessons learned from it to be used by sector initiatives around the country. So I'm thrilled to introduce today's panel. We have John Churchill, who's Executive Director for Workforce Development at Southwest Tennessee Community College. And that's where he developed, launched, and now runs the Industrial Readiness Training. Prior to joining Southwest, John had extensive private sector experience, having worked for 24 years with Fortune 500 companies like Kimberly-Clark and Nabisco, and also working as a training manager with Gerdau Ameristeel. And before that, he served 20 years in the military, where he got to start training Navy cadets on basic flight instruments. So I think you'll find that John's perspective, both as a trainer and his understanding of the needs of businesses, are really going to uniquely position him for this work. So thank you, John, for agreeing to speak with us today.
You bet. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. I want to also introduce Elizabeth Domas, who is the Senior Manager for Human Resources at Electrolux, which is, as you may know, one of the world's largest makers of household appliances. And earlier this year, Electrolux opened a new manufacturing plant in Memphis, where it's already begun hiring and expects to hire many more people over the next 5 years. So given the company's need to find those qualified employees, perhaps it's no wonder that Elizabeth and Electrolux are partnering with John and Southwest on the Industrial Readiness Training and finding solutions to their staffing needs. I want to add, too, that in workforce development, hearing the perspective of employers in your industry of focus is so critical, and really listening to what they have to say is so important. So we're really grateful to you, Elizabeth, for agreeing to share your perspective. Thanks for being on the webinar, too.
Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge that I'm joined in our Oakland, California offices by Laverne Gardner, who's our office manager and is providing technical support. So thanks, Laverne.
You're welcome.
If it goes smoothly, it's all because of you. If there are any glitches, it's all because of me. So in case you haven't attended one of our webinars before, here are some features of the control panel. To hide it, you can click on the arrow in the upper left. To bring it back, you can click on that arrow again. You can also listen to this webinar by phone or by streaming audio. And if you need to change or to choose which one you prefer, you can click on either one of these two toggle buttons in the audio pane. You are in listen-only mode, but we do want your questions and comments. In fact, we really, really encourage you to ask your questions and to contribute your thoughts about the topic today. So please type these questions and comments into the questions pane as they occur to you, and I will do my best to incorporate them into my conversation with John and Elizabeth, or to pose them during time we've reserved for questions and answers. Because we have so many participants, please be aware that we probably won't be able to get to everyone's questions, unfortunately. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and links to the recording, slideshow, and supporting materials will be emailed to you in the next few days. So if you registered before today, you probably received an email from me with a handout on which you can take notes. And I do want you to encourage you particularly to write down ideas that you plan to apply in your own work. If there's time later, I'll ask for some folks to volunteer what they've heard that they plan to use in their own programs. I know that the phrase work readiness probably has as many different interpretations as there are people participating in today's webinar. And so here's one definition that I took from a report that was an essential resource for me when I was developing training programs at JVS in San Francisco between 2000 and 2007. And you can see that I'm kind of focusing here on so-called soft skills as distinguished from other categories of skills like occupation-specific or technical skills, job search skills, computer skills, even literacy and numeracy skills. Those other skills are definitely essential for employment, and some who want to really define a candidate as work-ready include them on their checklist. But I want to focus on the aspects particularly that aren't necessarily included in those more intangibles that are so critical for employment. And you know, we know from hearing from employers, and maybe Elizabeth, you'll back me up on this, that these characteristics or these skills are really, in many cases, the bottom line for what employers really want. That they often say, well, we can train for most of the technical skills or the job-specific skills, but it's very hard for us either to assess these work readiness traits when people are coming in, or to help people acquire them after they're already on the job. Elizabeth, is that your perspective as well?
I believe the technical skills are the easiest to develop as long as the people have the basics. And these are the things that are also hard to pick up in an interview sometimes, to see the real teamwork or work ethic. And that really is imperative in our workforce today, I think. The soft skills side.
Well, I'm really glad to hear it. I'm also glad that with Southwest and John, you're finding a solution to this. I will just say that this report that I mentioned profiles a number of training programs that were successful at doing this, and we'll include a link to that for folks who are interested after the webinar. My organization, the National Network of Sector Partners, which is an initiative of the Insight Center for Community Economic Development, is the National Association for Regional Sector-Focused Workforce Partnerships and those who support them. We call those sector initiatives. And if you represent a sector initiative or are familiar with the concept, you will no doubt understand why this work readiness concept is critical for both job seekers and employers, and for sector initiatives to really master. I mean, the bottom line is that sector initiatives have to deliver for two sets of customers in ways that really reflect a deep understanding of both the target industry and the needs of job seekers within it. You'll see the third of these characteristics that we've identified for sector initiatives is about creating new pathways into jobs for entry-level workers. And, you know, if you're not able to address work readiness challenges, you're just going to exclude a whole lot of potential workforce and, frankly, also limit the pool of available workers for employers. So, you know, we really believe in the importance of this, and we know that it's something that's important for sector initiatives and other workforce development initiatives to really master. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? I envision this as a conversation among myself, John, Elizabeth, and you with questions and comments that you submit through the questions pane. But in order to keep it somewhat organized and to sort of give you all some guideposts along the way, these are the four sort of main questions that are going to organize our discussion. What problems was industrial readiness training designed to solve? And you know, these are problems for employers, for job seekers and workers, and for the community that is invested in strategies for economic growth and prosperity. Just some nuts and bolts about what the industrial readiness training is and how it works, also how it was developed. Results, of course, I mentioned before that this program's been highly successful. You'll see just how successful when we get to this section. And then how can what the program has done and learned along the way be applied to the work of others, and what have been the other maybe unexpected impacts of the program. So these are the sort of main questions that I think will roughly organize our discussion around. But without further ado, let's get into it and just start with the first question, which maybe I'll pose first to you, John, and then Elizabeth, feel free to chime in. You know, what was the catalyst for the industrial readiness training, and what problems is it designed to address?
Well, the Memphis or Shelby County area had two great positives, but because of a lack of communication or a lack of connectivity, it was really almost turned into a negative. And the two positives were, one, we have a great workforce. We have a workforce that has the ability and willingness to do the jobs required, whether it is industry or some of the other sectors. The other is we were in a cycle where jobs were coming to Memphis. The city leaders and community leaders have done a good job of bringing new companies in and talking current companies to expand. So we had this large influx of industrial, well-paying jobs, and we had this great workforce, but they weren't talking to one another. And so the companies felt like they weren't able to find qualified workers in the area, and the qualified workers felt like we keep hearing about jobs, but nobody's talking to us and nobody's looking at our resumes. So Southwest had an opportunity. They were invited to a meeting with the mayors and some of our board members and the president and the provost, and some industry representatives came to the meeting and basically announced that they were going to quit looking in the area because they could not find the people. And they told the story that they looked at thousands of resumes. They had decided to interview about 200. Out of that 200, they hired 60, and that was 3 months ago, and they had 20 left. And their story was, we can't do this anymore. And so Southwest said, we believe that you're not looking at the right people or the way you're searching, that you need to be able to see these individuals in a work environment. If you're looking at resumes just like you would for a salary position, you're going to miss a lot of that quality and talent that out there that can do your work. And so from that conversation, this program was designed and developed.
Okay, I can hear a number of things in that you know, I can imagine really started got this some attention. I imagine that statement that you know, these manufacturing companies which have been coming to the Memphis area or expanding their Memphis operations might either look elsewhere for workers or scale back on that growth would be something that was alarming to leaders responsible for economic development and others. Is that the case?
Absolutely. That was kind of the message that this organization, because quite frankly, they were in a startup mode, and they had customers relying on their ability to start up a product, and because of a lack of, or because of the inability to find qualified workers, their startup was in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm. I also found something that you mentioned around the being able to see the talent that already exists in Memphis as a part of the problem. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about who those available workers might be and what prevented them from being seen as qualified talent.
Can I just comment for a minute? When I think about the workforce and availability of workforce in my 10 years of being in the Memphis area, I think a lot of times people just don't know how to package themselves when they're doing the initial presentation, whether it be their resume or their application, and they don't have a way of really approaching companies, or they don't have the knowledge of how to do it in an effective manner. So companies are often inundated with many resumes where they may look at one or two out of the whole bunch because people don't know how to fill them out, appropriately. So I think part of it is how they present themselves. To your point earlier, the softer skills, how do you present it, how do you approach them, and how do you present yourself in a professional manner?
And in today's world, when you have thousands of resumes coming into a website or from a newspaper, and what happens is the only way you can sort through them is look for keywords. Well, if the population doesn't understand those keywords, and Memphis is unique in one area, is that for years we had some strong industry here, but those industries had left, and we become a logistics community. So it was almost as if you're leaving high school and you're not going to college, then you need to learn to drive a truck or drive a fork truck. And that was kind of a concept that was driven into a lot of people. And so just the ability to go out and properly interview or go out and understand the skills that industry is looking for was kind of lost on much of the workforce here in Memphis.
Okay. Well, speaking of the skills, oh yeah, go ahead.
One other thing with companies, we're hiring, and we want to hire quickly. We want to see the skills that people bring in a quick fashion. And I think, to your point about some of the searches in the online, when you apply, people miss how to present themselves. So I think that creates frustration on the part of hiring, companies when trying to locate people.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I understand that you're likely doing a lot of hiring in the upcoming years, and maybe even in the short term. You've opened a new plant in Memphis, or Electrolux has opened a new plant in Memphis. And so I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about sort of what Electrolux's hiring needs are, and what what you're looking for in qualified workers to meet those needs.
I think your first slide pretty much summed it up well.
Okay.
The commitment, the sense of urgency, the creative problem solving. We're looking for people who want to be here, that want to be part of a team and a positive culture. So we're looking for people that aren't afraid to roll their sleeves up and do the work in a safe manner. So
I know you're partnering now with John and Southwest and the IRT. I'm going to refer to it as IRT from now on. It's a little bit more compact that way. You're partnering. What particularly brought you to the decision to partner with them?
Just being in the area and knowing the workforce, I know we have talent out there, but they just need a little bit of, I guess, additional help and polishing, if you want to call it that. So I know what the college can do as far as helping us with develop the workforce and they're aware of what the businesses need in the area. They're right here local in the community. They see the type of people we have. So to me, what I really like about and why I like working with the colleges, they know what our needs are, and they're not afraid to partner with us in creating a program that's customized. So in other words, I don't have to go through 5,000 people, because when they go to the program, they are going to be developed in the areas that are important to us. My background is also in HR, but it's also in community college and training and development. That's how I got my start. So I know what a difference the community college can make in partnering with the businesses, and they hire the people with the right skills, train to do the training as well.
So having a program that essentially assures you that the people who come out of it have the characteristics that you need is really important to you as an HR professional and to Electrolux as a business.
That's right. And not only, I mean, we get to see the people as well. It's almost like we get to test drive the car before we buy it, okay? Because we're actually there participating in the program. We go, we present a little bit about the company, but then we're also sitting there. My different managers come in, and on the different topics that the IRT program talks about, we're participating. So we're helping develop that culture and kind of onboarding the people before they actually walk in the door, potentially.
Okay. Well, I'm going to want to ask you a little bit more about that in a little bit. But I want to ask you, just as far as other means of recruiting and or screening candidates, are there any other differences between what you're experiencing through the IRT and through, I don't know, temporary services or just open calls for resume, or are there other methods that you've used?
We actually have, we've been pretty consistent on working with the local, with the IRT program and hiring especially our hourly population. We do have some referrals that have come through, but we're not openly taking applications for our positions. We're going through the WIN program here, which partners with the community college and Electrolux to identify people. Other sources, and primarily we use the other sources for special type skills. Let's say somebody needs a particular license or certification, we may use alternative sources.
Okay, well that's real helpful. You know, we are getting some questions in, and I do want to encourage people to continue to send them. I think you may have already touched on this, John, but it does seem that manufacturing really is growing in Memphis and Shelby County. Is there anything else you want to add about, you know, what type of growth that is, or how important a thing it is?
Well, I think it's not just Memphis. I think it's you know, many of the larger cities. As transportation costs continue to rise, and as and areas like Shelby County and Memphis can show that it has a high-quality working population, I think industry will continue to come back to the United States and back into the urban areas. So, so I think Memphis is just indicative of a lot of areas. Those cities that can show that it has a workforce that can react and react quickly to this, I think those are the cities that are going to benefit by a large growth. The cities that stumble are not able to bring their best, because every area has that large area of maybe unemployed workforce, and many of them are capable and ready right now to go to work. But how do you sort through the ones that aren't ready, that are going to need more remedial, and then how are you able to put that best of your work in front of the companies? And for a community's ability to do that will have a big factor on other companies looking to expand or come into that area.
I know that that's so critical, and we often try to make the case, which I certainly believe, that workforce development is an essential component of economic development and can really support and be aligned with economic development goals. It sounds like you're thinking that way too.
Absolutely, and make no mistake, this course was not an accident. This course came through great partnerships, not only with the company, but community leader, business leaders, organizations like WIN. WIN was a very, very key part of this program. And the key thing that I had said earlier is you have this massive workforce that is either unemployed or underemployed. And if you have a cumbersome or enabled to sort through the ones that are ready to go to work right now, they just need that little bit of polish, then you get bogged down into that selection process. So one of the key successes of this program are the partnerships that were able to be built and being able to work with that workforce and identify those that are ready to go to work right now, and then the ability to work on some of those that aren't ready and to start to build their skills so they can move up into that ready category.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are getting questions in, and I really appreciate it. I hope people will continue sending them. Some will be on topics that we're going to get to in a moment. So the nuts and bolts of the program and what the course is, we'll get to. Don't worry. Also, folks have asked whether the PowerPoint will be available after the session, and yes, we will email a link to the slideshow to everyone who registered for the webinar. So you can look to get that in your email box sometime in the next day or two. I did get a question, John, about the initial situation with the 6,000 resumes, and not resulting in 60 qualified employees. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Who those resumes were from, and just what didn't work there?
Absolutely, and actually that 6,000 was kind of the second tier. What happened is this company had a startup. It needed about 150 people, and and it was going to grow to about 400, but it initially needed about 150 people. They were given by the local, and I'm not sure whether it was a WIN, but or the local workforce network here in Memphis. They were given almost 30,000 resumes. Out of that 1,000 resumes, they got down to about 6,000. Out of that 6,000, and what this was, once again, these resumes come from this massive group of unemployed and underemployed. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that this company didn't have a way to select the individuals. So what they were doing is they were looking at resumes, they were finding people who weren't capable of doing their work, they were overlooking the people who were capable of doing their work. So mm-hmm. The problem wasn't in the workforce, the problem was in the selection process. Mm-hmm. And now, and one thing about the selection process, I have seen programs similar to what we're doing where a college or a training institution will have kind of a mock work station where people do something to widgets, maybe put them in a box, and they'll have students come in and work all day long moving widgets or putting widgets in boxes. Quite frankly, that's not going to tell you whether they're industrial readiness or not. This program is an extremely interactive program where people have to interact with each other. They have to show their ability to work within teams. They have to show their ability to transfer knowledge from themselves to someone else, whether they've got good emotional intelligence, communication skills. So as someone from industry is watching these are the skills that is going to make a company successful. And that's why this selection process is so important. It's things, I can fool who I am in a half-hour interview, but you put me in an interactive class for 4 weeks and I become who I am. And it may not be that's not that I'm a bad person, but I may not be right for the industry that the class is being put on for.
Well, and some people also, I find, I go back to that polishing, they need a little polishing. They're a diamond in the rough, and they don't know how to present themselves. So when they apply to a job, they don't look at the company website, and they don't think to identify what the company's looking for when they apply. So they just apply randomly. So that, I think, to the point earlier about the sheer number of applications you get can become overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. So you've had this experience that's on the slide, represented on the slide as well, of getting an overwhelming number of applicants, but not knowing how to find those diamonds in the rough.
Absolutely.
Necessarily within. Okay. I think this is another of your employer partners, John, and I think earlier you alluded to hearing that if there wasn't a solution to be found, that employers might look elsewhere. And I just wondered, Elizabeth, if you didn't have a trusted source of qualified candidates locally, how would you be able to handle that, and what would the impact on Electrolux's business be of not being able to staff up?
You know, it's interesting because I'm optimistic enough to think we could find the people. I just think it would take us a lot longer to get where we needed to be. Oftentimes, I think companies will move over to hiring temporary workforce to help fill those needs on a short-term basis, but then you don't get the retention. You don't have the people that come and that are lifelong, kind of employees, and that's kind of what we're looking for. So I think, I think that's one of the things you could do to help on the short-term basis would be to use temporary agencies, but that's not what we wanted to do.
And one of the things that we found with the companies, and especially with KTG, is that you have a retention problem. When you do hire randomly or from resumes and interviews, a lot of times the employer or the prospective candidate thinks they want to go to work with this particular company, but when they start the company, they realize, gee, I don't like shift, or I don't like this, or it's too hot. And the class gives the student time to find out whether they really want to go to work for this company, because this company has an opportunity to explain the working conditions. But also, the employer gets a chance to see, is this person really going to work out in what we're expecting them to do? So retention is out of the roof compared to just open hiring. And we'll talk a little bit about just the fact that when they hire in groups, how that helps too. But what they found is not only did they find employees that they liked and are willing to come to work and do their job, but the retention was great.
Well, I think you're right that it'll be very interesting to talk about how that group dynamic factors in. I think you've already sort of addressed the point of this slide, which is about the availability of the workforce. And I expect that at this point folks are really itching to hear about the details of the program and how it works. So I think we'll just move right on to that. We've already gotten some questions about that. And I want to encourage folks, again, to keep sending those questions. They're great questions. And I know that John and Elizabeth will have great responses. So let's dig into the nuts and bolts now of what is the Industrial Readiness Training, and how does it work?
Do you want me to kind of run through it?
Yeah, John, that'd be great.
All right. Now, first of all, let's start. I always like to start with the results first. Here's what I would tell a prospective company. Let me show you a group of individuals, and what we'll be able to do is help you select those individuals that have the ability and willingness to learn, have great communication skills, have a good emotional intelligence awareness about themselves, can work within a team, can train someone else, or share knowledge and skills and ability, and has a good mechanical aptitude and a base level of math and reading skills. And my experience in industry, you give me a group of people like that, and they won't just become employees, they'll become partners in my success in that company. So starting with the results first, what this class is designed to do is to help prospective employers select individuals that they feel have those attributes. Now, two things that really make the success of the course, and by the way, we did not invent this. I worked with the company I worked for, we did this back in the 80s, and this is a process that we use to hire. You'll talk to many other schools, you'll talk to many other employers. This is not a new process. I think a couple of the things that are new is that we've brought it into the college as a continuous course, and of the partnerships, the local community and the WIN partnerships that we've developed. But figure out where I was going with it. We start off with that climate and culture. The first thing we tell them is, because we do not do a drug test, the first thing we tell them is if you can't pass a drug test, you need to leave. And invariably, about once every 3 classes, we'll get 1 or 2 people to get up and leave or not come back during the break. And then we go through a complete program of talking about what it's like to work in industry. We will only do this program with 1 partner in the room. We do not want 2 or 3 companies in there vying for the best students and having to use their salary and benefits and everything else to vie for the best students. So I call it the pull program. We don't start a class until we have a company that says they want to hire and they have open positions. We take that single company and they partnership with the class. They get an opportunity in that climate and culture to talk to the students about work environment, working conditions, and sometimes even a little bit about benefits or just whatever they want to talk about. And by the way, the employer partners that we have in the class, I don't care which topic we're talking about. If that individual wants to get up and help teach part of the class, they do it. The students spend more time in that 4 weeks, normally the students spend more time with that company's management than they will in the first 2 years of working for that company. Mm-hmm. So then when we get done with the climate and culture, we go into communications. We talk about the importance of communications, and quite frankly, all relationships start with that communications. And then along with communications, we get into emotional intelligence, and then we do a little DISC profile to kind of help them to understand some tools on how to put that communications and emotional intelligence to work. And we get into team building. We have some phenomenal team building exercises that really help them understand the importance of team building. A lot of our candidates have had a pretty rough go of it sometimes, and they're pretty independent. They're reluctant to ask for help. Some of them feel like working within a team and sharing and getting help is almost a weakness. And this is about the area you see some tremendous changes in individuals, and their confidence start to build, and you see that transformation. And then we do some math skills. We do practical math where we actually have instruments that they use to learn how to use measuring instruments and other things, and then they learn math that way. We talked a little bit about lean and waste and basic machines. We do basic machines. We do a test on machine aptitude by scientific management. We have a test that tests mechanical aptitude. We do it at the beginning of the class. We do have some mechanical training during the class, and then we have a post-test. And then we also use WorkKeys, where we test their reading, math, and locating information skills as a pre-test and a post-test. We ask them to study at least 30 hours on their own with KeyTrain, and this helps us gauge those who are really willing to go out there and learn. Go ahead.
People may not know what KeyTrain is.
Is KeyTrain, is that something, Jim, that we need to explain a little further?
Well, I think it's just it's an online or a computer-based tool for learning work readiness or learning the skills that are tested in WorkKeys.
Perfect, thank you. And that allows us, and we test, and we also measure the amount of time that they spend on that. We get them to commit to 30 hours, and we tell them, if you commit to 30 hours, and we turn all this information over to the employer, if you commit to 30 hours, and the employer sees you only spent 10 hours on it, why would they think that you would meet your commitments as an employee? And so the employer has a tremendous amount of data to look at, not just the behavior in the class, but one of the things we tell them that if you take these pre-tests and then the post-tests and you don't improve, it's 1 or 2 reasons. One, you don't have the ability to learn, or you don't have the willingness to learn. Mm-hmm. And why would I want to hire you in either case? And by the way, we're fairly tough on them. We have attendance policy. If you come in late, you have to go in front of the class, tell the class why you were late, and the class normally will push back. We had one lady that said she got in traffic, and in unison the class said leave home earlier. We have a dress code. If you come to class and you are not in the appropriate attire, you either have to leave the class and fix yourself up, or you have to go home. You're not allowed in the class without the dress code. We try to run it as much like a business as we can. We tell them that when you're out there on your own time, you can dress and you be yourself and be whoever you want. But when you're taking salary from a company, they want you to represent them in a positive way. They'll have customers maybe come in, and they want to see professional people doing the job in a professional way. And these are things that for a lot of these students, nobody's ever told them these things.
One thing that I'm hearing, John, is I know we've talked thus far a lot about the role that the IRT plays in helping employers sort of select employees that will meet their needs, almost a sifting function. But you're really talking about some changes that happen in the participants over the course of that 3.5 week program. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I just chimed in for John.
Yeah, great.
You know, when the people come to the class, we really, at the end of the class, we want to know, are they willing and able to come to work? Can they meet their commitment? Can they show up on time? Are they there every time? And they really do a good job of instilling this in the program, and it's reinforced, so it really does kind of build that expectation. So we've had, you know, good success when people come on board, understanding that when you sign up for this job, it means a real commitment of showing up and on time on a regular basis.
Okay. Well, oh yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it just builds that expectation up front.
Which expectation? Oh, the expectations about attendance, meeting your commitments, punctuality, appropriate dress.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought something you said, this element of employer involvement, John, is something that I'm sure directly influences all of that, having the employer in the room, and also the idea that there is a commitment to hire potential, you know, those who demonstrate that they're ready. All of these seem like they must be strong factors in the success of the program. These are some of your partners, I think, thus far. Do you want to?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you wanted to expand a little bit more upon the role of employers, and then Elizabeth, I want to ask you, as an employer who presumably has sat in that room, you know, what do you look for, and what's it like to sit in on those classes?
Now, first of all, that list of employers are not necessarily people we've done classes for. We've done classes for many of them, but they are in companies that have interviewed or hired our students. We had one company that had been looking for 3 months for 6 people, and they even went through their temporary employees working for them. And they just said, we can't find the people that we feel will be able to do the job. And we were able to send them over 5 individuals that were not selected by the company that sponsored the class they took. And out of that 5, the company immediately hired 3. And now when they go through their list of candidates on the internet, they look for that term IRT graduate. So a lot of these companies now, the Bartlett Chamber, they're helping us. That's a local community chamber. They're helping us with the IRT and introduce IRT to a lot of different companies. So these are companies that have either we've done classes for, or have hired our students, or are helping us improve the class.
And were these employers also involved in developing the class, or how was that process?
I'm sorry, say that again now?
So were these employers also involved in developing the course, or did they inform the way that the course ended up looking?
Only a couple of them. You know, City Brewery was the company that we actually did the first 4 beta classes with. They were very, very influential. Obviously, Electrolux is, Elizabeth and others at Electrolux have helped us immensely. And quite frankly, any company that we go to when we do this IRT class, it's not a cookie cutter. The first thing we do is we go through the slides and go through the program of the company, and we ask them, what can we do to make this a little more specific for your company and the employees that you're looking for. We don't like to change a lot of it, and once they see what we're doing, they may modify a little of this or a little of that, but it pretty much stays intact. So I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does. Elizabeth, I was going to ask you about the experience of sitting in this class and what that's like. I know that's not maybe the norm as far as a relationship between potential employer and candidates.
Sure. No, I really enjoy sitting in the classes with the participants because you really get to learn who they are as people. Oftentimes the interviews, like I said earlier, you just kind of talk to them for 30 minutes to make a decision. But here I'm really getting to talk to and know these individuals and get to understand a little bit more about what it is that they like, what their strengths are, what their opportunities for development are. And so it really helps me know who they are. So when they come to interview, I can also say, hey, I think this person might be a good fit over here because I think they have a mechanical aptitude that would lend themselves to this department. So I think it's good because it helps me know them. But number two, I think it helps the participants know the company as well because I'm there, I'm a representative, I'm talking about our culture, so they know what they're walking into when they come to interview and if they get potentially hired. So the more we participate, I think the better partnership we form with these folks and the better relationship we have as they come on board. Another thing I've really enjoyed seeing is how they grow throughout the program because they really do focus on the communication a lot, which is, I think, very important, in our personal and professional life, right? So one of the things that I really like observing is when they come up and they speak in the beginning, they're really nervous. They don't know how to present themselves. They're a little hesitant, but by the end, they're cheering each other on. And they are able to articulate, what strengths they can bring to the company, and they just blossom throughout the program.
And I think Elizabeth brings on an important point. The main purpose of this course is to take individuals that are able and willing to work into industry, but polish them a little bit, give them some of the skills, let the students get a little sharper on the things that will make them competitive for job interviews, and it helps the company select the right people and put them in the right position that gives them the best chances of being successful. But the other thing that happens is that for the individuals who aren't selected, that isn't, okay, I didn't make it, I lose. They go back to win, or here at the college, we help brush them up a little bit on maybe what made them not quite competitive. Sometimes they just weren't ready or they just weren't right for that job. But what happens is it has been life-changing for them because then their search for a job is completely changes and they're better able to go to other places and get a job. To give you an example, we had a young lady that her husband had died and she needed to find work. She had worked for many years ago, but she had not worked for quite a few years. And she went to the class for a particular company, wasn't hired, couldn't get her scores up high enough, continued to try, worked with Win, worked with us, and she was hired about 3 weeks ago. And this lady was 68 years old. She never gave up, continued to work, and think about her being 68 years old and how many people would have given up and said, well, I'm never going to get hired. And she got hired at a very livable wage simply because she had the confidence that it would happen, and she got the encouragement from Win and Southwest and other individuals to continue to pursue the job market.
John, we've gotten a number of questions about specific aspects of the program and how it operates. Maybe I can share each of them with you, and you can give me a short response. A lot of it is sort of facts about the program. The first is just about the assessment protocol that leads to someone being accepted or not accepted into the program. You referenced WorkKeys. Is that the primary method of determining who gets in and who doesn't?
Yes. WorkKeys is the primary, but and they do go to WIN. And once again, WIN is an important partner for helping us select the right students. WorkKeys is the primary one. They have to be at least a bronze. We have found that if they're below bronze, we really can't make the improvement we need to make. But a lot of it is their attitude when they're making the application. You know, if they get hostile, if they're impatient, if they appear to need some other type of skills, then WIN asks them to work on those skills before they apply. But WorkKeys is the most important.
Okay. And you've mentioned WIN, and that stands for Workforce Investment Network, the public workforce agency. So you're receiving referrals from WIN already with the WorkKeys assessment completed. Is that how that works?
College actually does the WorkKeys testing for WIN, but yes, what WIN will do is they'll give them a pre-test to see how they would fare with the WorkKeys. And
okay.
then based on that, then WIN will go ahead and test them in WorkKeys, and if they are at least a bronze, then that's one step of making them eligible for the class.
Great. Some specific questions about the training that's provided. First of all, I'm assuming this is a non-credit course. Is that right?
Yes, it is a non-credit course.
And it's 49 hours over 3.5 weeks?
It is 49 hours. We've actually added some time to it. That 49 hours included the pre-test and the post-test. Once again, out of demand from the companies, we have added 10 more hours where every individual will now leave with an OSHA card.
Aha. Okay, so this has also evolved over time, and
it will continue to evolve. You know, that's why I'm saying to you that we've got Elizabeth and Janet and a lot of the other community leaders and business leaders that are a part of a committee that we sit and talk about not only how do we continue to improve this and make sure that we stay relevant to what companies need, but then how do we break into other industries and how do we help use this program to branch out in other areas that helps the local workforce.
Mm-hmm. Others, I've got some questions about just how many participants are in each class. What's the retention like in class? Do people mostly stick with it, or do folks drop out? And whether any of the...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And whether any of the training is done online.
Yes, let's do the online first.
Okay.
We asked the students to do at least 30 hours of training online, and most of that is reading, math, and locating the information. We also provide a tutor. Normally we have a tutor that comes in 4 hours before the class if it's a afternoon class, or 4 hours after the class if it's a morning class, and they're able to come in and get one-on-one help from the tutor on the online training.
But that is in addition to the coursework that they do at the actual college. Yes. In the classroom.
Yeah, that does not count as a part of that 49 or the 59 hours now. That does not count.
In addition to.
It's in addition to that. Now, your other question was a dropout. We've taught this class with as many as 32 people in the class, and I've taught it with as few as 12. We find that somewhere between 18 and 24 is the best size, and so we try to keep it to that. If we start with 24, we will occasionally lose maybe 1 or 2, very rarely. Many times we'll start with 24 and end with 24, but if we do lose them, I don't know if I can ever remember a class losing more than 4 people from start to finish, because the class really isn't a class where you go in and get a lot of lecture and see a lot of PowerPoints. It's a class where you just instantly start to be able to tell the other people in the class who you are. It's very interactive. It really, the students themselves actually start taking a lot of ownership for the class.
I'll ask one more question and then we'll move on because I want to hear about the results of all this training. But I'll say there was a specific question about what tool is used to measure the machining aptitude. Did you mention that already, or did you?
I did, but I'll mention it again. As you see, I don't do short well, but I'll try. We have it's scientific management. It has a mechanical aptitude. It has a machine that measures mechanical aptitude. I personally have used it since the early 80s. It's a machine that tests mechanical aptitude very well. It is legally validated test, and it allows us to find out if this individual does have a mechanical aptitude. And by the way, we have found that it is very, very gender neutral. Our classes probably are about 40%, probably over 40% female, and that's another thing. This class has allowed a tremendous amount of females to get into this area where normally you think there's a lot of men. But our classes are probably at least 40 to 42% female, and they do just as well on the mechanical side as the men do.
Okay. Well, I do want to move on. I want to mention in response to another question that, yes, this session is being recorded. So I will send links to everyone who registered for the webinar at the email address you provided to the recording, which will be posted on the web. So thanks for the interest, and look for that in the next couple of days. Elizabeth, you may have noticed that I was scrolling through some of the photos from the class. These are actually drawn, John, from the video on YouTube that depicts the program and has a host of folks talking about it. But I wanted to ask Elizabeth specifically, as we scroll back through pictures from the class, whether there's anything in these pictures that, reminds you of something that you observed or that you look for when you're observing students in action.
It's hard to say from the pictures, but I just, one of the things I look for in sitting through the class, I guess, is how well they participate. So for me, the pictures don't really resonate, but what I do appreciate is the professional dress when they're sitting there, the attention to what the instructor's doing, and the teamwork aspect of things.
One thing I'll say on the pictures also is that we know we do not have any of the electrical things in the class as of now, and so but the pictures that you have shown show a lot of the students doing a lot of different things. But at this point, everything that we're doing now is either soft skills or the mechanical or math.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about what the outcomes of the program have been to date. And I have here some information about, I understand that you, John, got this program up and running very quickly after that meeting that you started us off by talking about. Can you tell us what happened in the sort of that pilot phase of the project?
Yes, and thank you for asking that question, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the team here at Southwest. The Southwest made the challenge to the companies in the last week of November. I started with the college the first week of December. The company that took Southwest up on its challenge said we have to hire at least 15 to 20 people on the 1st of February. So backing that up for that 3.5 to 4 week class, we had to start the class on January 8th. We did not have any of the material. This was all conceptual at this time, and the team that I worked with here at Southwest worked 12-hour days. The only days they took off during that period of time was Christmas Day and New Year's Day, and it is a phenomenal team. But January 8th, we started that class. We obtained the piece of equipment from scientific management. We put all the training material together. and we selected the students. Even though WIN wasn't paying for this, the college paid for 100% of this. The students did not pay any tuition, and the company didn't pay. And at the time, it wasn't approved, so WIN wasn't sending students. But WIN helped us with the selection process. And out of that first class, we had 19 people. Out of that 19 people, 17 were hired. And then one of the two were hired 2 weeks later by another company. So we were very, very pleased. We then did 3 more classes. Out of that 106 students, think about this now. Out of that 106 people that came to this class that would have never had an opportunity to be looked at by this company, 82 of them were hired.
Yeah, that's really having an impact, and I know it really must have persuaded you that, yeah, we're onto something here.
Yes, and it persuaded, and I will say that the leadership here at the college, and it wasn't just the leadership at the college, it was the purchasing department, it was the human resource department, and I shouldn't start naming them because I'll for sure leave some out. But every department here at the college helped us get whatever we needed in that short period of time. So being able to respond to a company's needs in that short of time, instead of talking about it for 5 or 6 months and going through this long, arduous program, the team here at Southwest was able to take the request, find the need, and turn that around in a very short period of time, and it made the difference in 82 people's lives.
So John, did the experience of doing this, the fact that you demonstrated, in fact, that you could do this, turn around on a dime, create something that has this impact, not just for participants, but for this employer who had a very specific need, did that lead to other employers, such as Electrolux or other employers, saying, "Hey, we've got to do this too"?
Absolutely. It led to a couple areas. It led to companies also coming to us and say, "Hey, we have another issue or employee development issue that we would like you to help us find a solution for." So it gave our team the confidence that we can do whatever we need to do to help a company if we put our mind to it. But it also allowed companies to say, "Hey, here's somebody that's not just going to talk about it, but here's somebody that will sit down, talk to us, understand the issue, and then work as a partner to help us find that solution." And maybe Elizabeth is a little better to address that.
No, I think the partnership is really what makes it effective, because the community college has come in and worked with us on the specific needs we've identified. And not only has it worked with us, but as we hire the people, they also know what our business is. So they're able to provide other options and solutions for us with regards to training or developmental opportunities that we're able to pull them in on. So it kind of creates that real partnership that I think has been real effective.
Well, so I know that since the success of the pilot, you've gone on to offer multiple additional classes, and the results from that sound like they are highly consistent with, or even surpass the results of the four pilot classes.
Yes, and once again, what excites me and keeps me energized over this program, and quite frankly keeps the team energized over this program, is I'll say it again, you got out of that 532 students that have been through the class, 430 of them are either actively in a hiring process or have found work. And I will tell you that the rest of those students are working with WIN or with Southwest or with another organization, and are finding out what limit their ability to be competitive for those jobs, and they're improving themselves. We're right now working on a process where we're partnership with Tennessee Technology Center. It's a technical aspect of the Tennessee Educational Network, where those individuals that haven't found a job will go on and get more education in electrical or mechanical training, And then we're also working with container maintenance company where we will also take some of those students and give them further training to make them more competitive for maybe even some of the technical jobs. So, you know, the way I feel is we're tapping into a tremendous resource, a great workforce, giving them opportunities they wouldn't normally have, but we're showing industry that we've got a phenomenal workforce that has got an untapped ability to learn and to perform the work. And whether if you don't succeed at first, there are so many other opportunities out there, and it all starts with this program.
Well, you're reflecting something that I've talked about with sector initiatives who are interested in knowing how to get started or how to establish employer relationships, and this is the importance of demonstrating early wins or successes that benefit them, and then the opportunities that flow from that seem like they are many and various now. I'm excited to hear that. I'm not just saying something that I believe to be true, but that, you know, your experience validates.
Yes, you know, and what happens is our team has become more confident, and we show that confidence when we're talking to companies, and we've learned how to say to a company, come be our partner, let us find out what's happening. And the more the companies will come in and be our partners, the more we learn what they need in an employer. Therefore, then we are able to go back out and take that learning and have open enrollment classes with the confidence of telling students, you learn these things and you'll be competitive in the job market. Where in the past, a lot of times, we may be spending a tremendous amount of time teaching skills that really were not valued by the companies that these students were going to be going out and interviewing with.
So let me ask you, Elizabeth, about the outcomes for Electrolux so far. First, you know, how many of these classes have you participated in so far, and you know, what have the results been for Electrolux?
I've participated in a lot of them. I don't even know if I can count them all. I think we've had eight classes, and we've participated pretty extensively in most of them. I think the outcomes have been great in that, you know, we've got a pool of people that we can pull from, you know, as our hiring demands increase, you know, that we can pull from, and we know they come in with the basic skills to do the job. We know they have the communication, the teamwork, they understand our values, and that, you know, they have the basic math and reading and the skills that really we know they can come in the door that we can build upon. So for me, it's, you know, we've been able to, like I said earlier, test drive the people, and not only that, you know, when they come on board, we know who they are, and they've already got a network, a support network with one another, because they form bonds and relationships, and it's been fun to watch the accountability. They hold each other accountable when somebody slips up. So it's really good to see that they've already kind of got that teamwork and that those relationships built when they come on board.
It's almost like a fraternity or a sorority where even someone who has graduated from an earlier class is working at a company like Electrolux, and then someone else comes in, well, what class did you graduate from? Or they'll, and as Elizabeth said, they don't just hold each other from their class accountable. Somebody will know that you also graduated. You know, you didn't learn that behavior. You know, you need to change your behavior, and they'll use what they learn in the IRT class to monitor and coach each other.
So yeah. Let me make sure I understand. I mean, I'm hearing two things that seem really to flow from this model of training cohorts for a specific employer and then hiring, hiring a cohort from each class. One is that cohort, when they move together to the work site, they already know each other. They already support each other, and as you said, hold each other accountable. So they're going to help each other be more successful than someone who was maybe not connected to anybody yet in the workforce. Am I hearing that right?
That's right. I think, one of the things, the program, through all the training on communication, through the DISC profile, through the team building, when they come out, they actually have a common language that they share amongst one another. So when they're using terms about, and learning to work with different personalities, and so they actually know how to talk with one another and to support one another and to challenge one another in ways that aren't, confrontational necessarily, but positive.
And the second piece sounds like that even across classes, if they know that others came through the IRT, they have a common language for talking about some of the issues that might arise on the workforce or on the work site, and for addressing each other, and they don't necessarily feel shy about making the connection from their shared experience.
Absolutely, and I think the program really, it builds their self-confidence. So when they do come into the workforce, they are, able to articulate, ways to improve things. They're not afraid to bring things up or to speak up, and they know how to do it in a way that gets them heard. So,
Elizabeth, knowing this and also knowing about the significant investment of time that Electrolux puts in, I guess yourself as well as some of your managers there in sitting in on the class, who made the pitch to you, or what was the pitch to you, or did you approach the college to say, hey, we hear about this, we want to get in on it?
Probably a little of all of the above. I think we wanted to partner early on with, the local resources to help us get our workforce, not just put in ads necessarily. So we really did want to partner with the community, with WIN and with Southwest, to make sure that we could identify people and provide kind of a streamlined approach to getting our workforce that had the and kind of the culture we wanted to create.
One of the sell jobs that we use is, you think about it, if you've got to go through 30,000 resumes, what is the staff requirement for that? And then to select those that you think are going to possibly be worthy to interview, making those phone calls, narrowing that down, and then finally doing the interviews. And because you don't have a class to really see them, it may take 6 or 7 interviews or ever how many interview banks that it takes. Taking all that effort versus sitting in a class for about 40 hours and watching 24 people and being able to select the best out of that group. Quite frankly, it's much more efficient. It isn't a longer method. It's a much more efficient and effective method of having a selection process.
So at this point, you don't find it's a tough sell?
Oh, absolutely not.
No, I don't think it's a tough sell. And what's interesting is the number of other companies that have just reached out, locally inquiring about the program because they have heard some of the results from it.
So would you say you might even be reaching a point where you have more demand than capacity to fill? And if so, how do you manage that, or how do you manage interest from multiple employer partners?
Well, right now, once again, having WIN and going back to, if I would tell you that WIN introduced Southwest to Electrolux. So it's having that partnership with WIN that really helped Electrolux and Southwest get together. And then your question there is, what we've tried to do early on, I was chastised sometimes by some of the team members and others, why don't you advertise this? Why don't you let everybody know about it? And my problem is that if we get a higher demand than we can produce, then we could lose credibility. So we've gone slow. Right now, we do have the capacity to produce 150 students a month. And very quickly, my belief is that we could go to 200, and then I would say within a few months we could be at 300 per month if we had to. So I'm confident that we have the ability. My 2 bottlenecks is the funding for the students to bring them through the program and the selection process. Those are probably my 2 bottlenecks, but right now that has not created a problem. WIN Wynn has worked extra hours. Vivian Alexander at the Wynn office is the one that helps us do the selection process. Vivian and her team, whenever Elizabeth or another company says, hey, I want a class, I make the phone call. We say, we need this amount of people. And by the way, about 10% of the people self-pay. But when we go to Wynn, we tell them we need a class. They immediately go into the action mode. They start the selection process, and we have not had to tell a company that we could not produce enough individuals for a class for them yet. And I feel as long as we're proactive and continue to look for possible issues and how to solve those issues, we won't have that problem.
So John, I'm really glad that you mentioned the partnership with Memphis Wynn, and particularly that referral that they made of Electrolux to you. And I found myself thinking that forgive the pun, but there is a win-win situation for them and for you about that, in the sense that this partnership is a way for Wynn to also achieve really strong outcomes from its investments, but it's also supporting students to participate in class. How much are they paying per student? And you said 10% of students also pay their own way.
10% of the students pay for way, and now, by the way, Parish, our Bossier
City.
Yeah, Bossier Parish Community College in Bossier City has duplicated this effort, and they found the exact same results. And every community college is going to have to see how much it costs them to do the pre-test and the post-test and all of the training. We pay very well, and so each college is going to have to come up with a cost, but we work that out with Wynn. We have to get the class approved by Wynn, and then Wynn sets a budget, and I think right now, out of that 500 and some classes, Wynn is paid for about 90% of them.
Okay. Are the employer partners contributing to the cost of offering the class?
No, and I get asked that a lot, and my comment to that is, that a community invites an employer into a community and says, we have a great workforce. I would not want to ask an employer to train the general population workforce just to find candidates. I think it's a great selection process. The employers are more than willing to invest in money to the individuals after they get hired, and it helps us attract great companies that believe in self-improvement of the individuals that work for them, which then allows for those individuals to take that self-improvement home, and it really has a change in the workforce in that community. So, personally, I would not ask a company to help pay for this program. It is our responsibility to put good employees in front of those employers.
Well, I only ask because some folks in the audience asked, and what I hear is that, first of all, the employer is making a significant investment in the program as far as their involvement in classes and in the development of it, and that also it's really providing benefit to everyone involved. So thanks for answering that question. I've just been scrolling through some participant photos, you may have noticed, and I also had some participant success stories. I want to move on to the last area of just lessons learned, and because we're running short on time, I think we won't. We'll focus on just the sort of the top lessons learned. But if there's one thing that each of you thinks is what makes the program work, what would you say it is?
Elizabeth has given me first right of refusal. It's not one thing. I guess I will tell you what the one thing is. It's the partnership.
That's what I was going to
say. It's building, and Elizabeth just shook her head yes. It's building the right partnerships, and that partnership is with the workforce itself. It's with the local chambers. It's local business leaders. We have a young lady that is an entrepreneur. She's taken an interest in us. She has been immensely helpful. And so it's bringing partners together and then training partners like Tennessee Technology Center or local community colleges in the area other than Southwest. All are looking now how to tie in and to start to help our graduates to grow in different areas.
Yeah, I was going to say the partnership and the collaboration amongst the different entities, WIN, Southwest, and the companies. And I think it's as effective, too, sometimes as much energy and time that the company wants to put in it as well. Because the more we're involved, the better, we're able to support and provide our input on what the program needs. We can also do provide that bigger picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I realize.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. I was going to say the second most important thing I think is worth mentioning, and that is the selection process. Selecting the right individuals that have the best chance of succeeding once they get into class, because once again, you have this huge, massive workforce that are either underemployed or unemployed, and how do you work with the individuals that aren't quite ready for those classes is another issue for another day. But how do you select the individuals that are ready so you're not wasting that training dollar? And getting those individuals in that class, getting them in front of the companies and letting them go on and be the person that they can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I realize it's a totally unfair question to ask, what's the one thing? So I think you all handled that beautifully. Thank you. And, it makes me wonder what participants would say, you think, if they were asked the same question for them. What would the one thing for a participant that a participant would say makes the class successful?
I had a student tell me, and I think this is part of the transformation you see. He was 47 years old, and he said, "John, I've never made more than $25,000 a year in my life." He said, "I've always been limited, and I always felt it was them." He said, "The one thing this class has taught me, it wasn't them, it's me. Everything is in my control. It's my attitude. It's my willingness and how I present myself." He said, that individual, by the way, had come back to me after working a few months at a job making $60,000 a year.
Uh-huh.
And so that, I think he personifies that transformation we see in a lot of individuals.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to move more quickly through a couple of remaining slides, and then we'll wrap up. I referenced a study earlier called Hard Work on Soft Skills that identifies characteristics of effective work readiness programs. And I just want to acknowledge that many of the things that we've heard today from you, John and Elizabeth, about what makes IRT work are reflected here. And I particularly heard, you, John, talk about the discipline of the workplace being reflected in all aspects of the program. I think that there's probably something to be said for the opportunities that participants have to get to know, successful people or people who are already working in the industry. Is there anything that you want to add about this before we move on?
I think you've pretty well covered it. Elizabeth, do you have? No, I think you've covered it well.
Great. I also know that earlier in a webinar we recently did, we covered the topic of ex-offenders and how to give job seekers the opportunity to get beyond the label of ex-offender to be a person with a set of skills and talents and values that an employer might want to hire. And something about that resonated with me as far as this course and the way that it gives its participants a chance essentially to be seen for who they are rather than just for that label. I'm wondering if you think that that's right, that this helps with those with similar kinds of barriers to their employment.
What happens to an ex-offender is, first of all, they have to put it on their resume. So if the pre-selection is done by looking at resumes, when that individual walks into that first interview, he or she has already got a barrier they have to overcome. Not saying that they can't overcome it, but they've got that barrier. Well, when an ex-offender comes into the class, we don't make them put on a red hat or something that identifies them as an ex-offender. So an employer looks at that individual as what they can contribute as an individual contributor. They get to know that individual as who they are. And then, now, let's talk about, degree of ex-offender. If it's a violent crime or a crime of theft or something that or other hard issue that company is just not going to hire, there's a difference. And also many, especially large companies, have policies like that the offense has to be over 7 years old. So other than things like that, once they see that individual is who that individual is and how they can be that individual contributor, then when they find out as an ex-offender, they no longer have to overcome that barrier. That barrier has already been overcome, and having it overcome before the fact of knowing that they're an ex-offender makes a huge difference. And we've had people come in and said, we won't hire an ex-offender, but yet at the end of the class they said, you know what, we're wrong. We're going to hire these individuals. So we've had quite a few of ex-offenders hired because of that.
Well, thank you for that. I want to ask one more question. I know you said that the program is being replicated in Bossier Parish and I think elsewhere. Is there anything that you're learning about the course from the process of adapting it to other situations?
Absolutely. What we're learning is that it is not a fluke. It is repeatable, and the results can be repeatable. And I love your question about what is the one thing. If you figure out what the 1, 2, or 3 things are that make this successful, it's not the content. It is dynamic teachers that can relate to the students. I do believe it's having one teacher through the whole program, so they do build that trust as having the companies in there. But I guess the one thing that I know by allowing it or by helping it expand into other communities, it's repeatable, and I do believe it's important for a workforce being introduced to the industrial community.
Okay.
Elizabeth,
well,
you got?
Yeah, go ahead. If there's something you wanted to add, Elizabeth, this would be a great time.
No, I think that was nicely stated.
Well, I want to acknowledge that there are many questions that came in that we did not get to. I integrated as many of them as we could into the discussion, and I thank you for your questions. I may have mentioned earlier that I first learned about the Industrial Readiness Training when John presented about the program at a conference that NNSP offered last year. And I want to say that we're offering that conference again this year, and it happens that we're going to be bringing it to Memphis. Well, I say it happens, but it's not just the food and the music that's bringing us to your city. There's a lot of great sector work happening in the area, including not only at Southwest Tennessee, but also at Memphis Bioworks and Mid-South Community College. So I just want to encourage people to save the date, look for a save the date notice soon. We hope to involve John and perhaps make a visit to Southwest to give folks a chance to actually see the program in operations. And we certainly hope that you all will be able to join us later this fall.
Which you should. All right. Well, listen, thank you for having us. We've enjoyed this, and it's been a great opportunity, Jim. I appreciate it.
Well, I just want to thank you so much, John and Elizabeth, for sharing your expertise. I want to encourage people also to give us their feedback on this session as they exit the webinar. It should pop up, and really It'll probably take 30 seconds. Actually, I added a question or two. It might take 45 seconds now to just tell us what you thought about this webinar. Tell us what we can do even better next time. We will be offering webinars throughout the summer and fall as we do, and we want to hear from you. So John and Elizabeth, really just thank you. It's been a wonderful experience to hear from you about what's working, and you all are doing great work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for participating. If you have more questions or want to follow up with me directly, here's my contact information. You can also follow NNSP on Twitter at NNSP, or you can sign up to receive our email updates if you are not already signed up to receive them on our website, www.nnsp.org. That will include announcements of future webinars such as today's. So thanks, everyone. This is the end of the webinar. Have a great evening and the rest of your week.